Hello guys, Szwimer speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM Reacts, episode number 848. And today I'll be reacting to Purple Roads Podcast, episode number 81. Jason Szwimer, the host of Find DW. Now, I'll get back to the reactions to Find DW some other time. But right now, I'll react to Purple Roads Podcast, episode number 81. Jason Szwimer, host of Find DW. So let's react to this beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm Carrie Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure. For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour, and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show, Barney and Friends. Now my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carrie Stinson, and this is Purple Roads.
Pam?
Welcome to Purple Roads. My name is Carrie Stinson, and I'm so thrilled, as always, that you're here. This is going to be such a fun episode. I'm very excited about this because we're talking to a voice actor, but we're also talking to a podcaster, which you know how much I love that. So I'm so excited. New podcast, Finding DW, has been very popular. Jason Szwimer, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Carrie.
Oh my goodness! welcome. I love this whole podcast thing was new to me a couple years ago, and I have just fallen in love with it. And I love talking to podcasters. So welcome.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I also really love the medium. So yeah, it's always great to connect with another podcaster for sure.
So there's so many places because yours really started from your voice acting.
Yeah. So my podcast is all centered around my experience as a voice actor when I played the voice of DW from seasons 7 to 10 of the show Arthur.
Okay,
And, I
makes
found
sense.
out that DW had only been voiced by male voice actors. So I thought it'd be really fun to try to find them all and interview them.
Okay.
Which I think it's a great idea. I started mine because I knew other people in this industry had the same experiences that I had, and I wanted to hear them. I wanted to talk to people like that. So I think when you have that connection, it makes it really interesting. Arthur obviously is a very popular show
Which is now canceled, by the way. Continue on.
Lots of kids, and obviously I know about popular shows. So I want to start out talking about Arthur, and then we'll get into all this other stuff. There's a lot of places I want to go. But what was it like when you got that role, and understanding the importance of Arthur?
So I mean, I grew up watching you, and I grew up watching Arthur. And so when my mom told me, my mom has a long commute to work, and she was stuck in traffic and heard an ad on the radio. It was an open casting call for voices on Arthur. And so we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what character it was going to be for, but my mom knew that I was loud and had lots of energy and thought I might be good at it. So she took me into audition. They said I was going to be auditioning for Arthur, and I got for DW, and I got cast in the room. And I was super excited. I was thrilled to be on this show that I knew, that I loved, and I was very familiar with the character and the world, and so I was just excited to be a part of it.
And had you done any voiceover acting before that?
Prior to that?
Yeah.
No.
It's a story that I love, and I'm seeing it a lot, which is really interesting to me. I had never been in a costume before, Barney, something I went after. We had an interview recently with the current official voice of Mickey Mouse, and he had no acting experience. He just had such a passion for it that he went after it. Now here you are doing this, and I love that. What drove you to go do this and not worry, whether you get it or not, you got to go do, something, your passion for it. What kind of drove you for that audition?
Well, I think it was, I was 10, right? So I think it was more my mom just thinking it would be fun, just like playing soccer after school is fun.
Right.
It's that blissful kind of ignorance and not, overthinking or that comes along with being a kid.
Right.
I was just looking for fun things to do.
And so there wasn't a whole lot of nerves when you did it?
No, not at all. I was really excited to do it. I wasn't super engaged with what I was learning in school, and loved an excuse to leave school early, like 3 times a week, to go and be goofy and silly and do
Sure.
these voices.
Mm-hmm.
So no, there was no nerves. There were no nerves.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had several of the kids from Barney on now, that are just like you, an adult, and I've heard those different responses. Some of them just wanted something fun to do. Some of them wanted a full career. Some of them were actually kind of scared and nervous, but so it's interesting to see these different responses. So you go audition and then you get it. What is that experience like?
What the just getting the role? You mean?
Yeah, getting the role, and now you're going to do this. Are you nervous about it? Or you're just like, no?
Not really. I mean, I know. Truthfully, I mean, when we found out that it was all so fast, right? I got cast the same day that I auditioned. And
Wow.
So we went from not being an actor, not being in show business at all, to hey, get your kid an agent because you're
Wow.
gonna start doing the thing. And next thing I knew, I was getting my headshot done. Next thing I knew, I had an agent. Next thing I knew, I was going to auditions all the time and
Wow.
doing other cartoons and what have you. It was really just in it and out of nowhere, right? And so.
Right.
No nerves, just more along for the ride, having fun. I mean, I thought more about, oh, we're going to that studio. Oh, that's the studio where they have candy. I was more excited about that
Wow.
than I was about, doing the actual voice was great and super fun,
Right.
but definitely no memory of being scared or overthinking it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it like when your friends find out? What
I
you're
mean,
doing?
no one believed me until the episode started airing with my
Right.
name in the credits.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We had like a show and tell day or something like that, and I brought in a VHS tape with episodes that I was on that at the time Cinar, the production company that was making Arthur at the time, gave to
Right.
me. Because I wanted to. It wasn't like a showing off thing. It was just people thought I was lying.
Right.
And I
Right.
just wanted to
Sure.
prove to them that no, this is real. I really
Wow.
am the voice of DW because it
Right.
sounds like
Mm.
a lie. Especially, I think when you don't know that DW is only voiced by male voice actors.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Other kids might not even be aware that cartoons aren't real. Like
Well.
there's a lot of variables there.
Right.
So it was. But once people found out, everyone was really excited about it. It was a lot of attention very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I went through that, and the kids went through that too with Barney. We're sure you're making it up or something like that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's such a cool thing. Listening to what you're talking about and what your podcast is about, and obviously that's something that's very common in the industry. We had the voice of Stanley, who is a female,
Which I did react to over the time period. Continue on.
and the male role. So in this case, you guys have done the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned from your podcast with everyone coming on? The fact that what is everyone's theory on this? They only did guys for a female role.
I think it's been an interesting experience dealing with that topic specifically. So, it's something I always took for granted because I never thought much of it. I was, again, as I've said before, I was just excited to do the part. And, whenever I've asked, oh, why has the character only been played by male voice actors? The answer was always just, very simple, based purely on casting, voice quality. The first person who did the role sounded so good, and that person happened to be male, so we were just trying to match that person. Answers like that. So I really didn't think much about it. And what I've learned through doing this show is there seems to be a large contingent of people who knew, and a larger contingent, or maybe not necessarily larger, but certainly a vocal contingent of people who didn't know. And who are, and of those people, there are some that are upset, justifiably in a sense. It's been really interesting to get more into that. Just things surrounding, questions about gender stereotyping and gender projection, and
Mm-hmm.
I think things that are very much in the zeitgeist right now, things like the patriarchy and taking parts away from women, and women not having the opportunity maybe to audition to play DW,
Okay.
things like that. So it's been really interesting for me. I devoted one episode of what I think will be 12 in total just to that topic.
Right.
And I don't think,
Okay.
obviously, I'm just scratching the surface. I mean,
Sure.
I only did one, but it was, it has been something that I hope to continue learning more about. What is my role? Does it matter? What can I do? As someone that considers themselves an ally and a feminist, what is my responsibility, if any?
Right.
I don't want to be too self-aggrandizing, but it's an important issue that I believe in surrounding it. So, I think it's been interesting to get more into that piece of the larger conversation of what it means to have played the voice of DW.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's very fascinating because this is a subject that you're seeing now, right? As we
Mm-hmm.
have social media and we have a lot of access to everyone, and we know a lot more
Mm-hmm.
than we did before. And I'm really curious about that, because if you're in the business, you understand a little bit different than if you're out of the business. For example, BJ, the character behind me, was played by a woman,
Mm-hmm.
which not many people realize that one of the toughest boys was played by a woman. And as I mentioned, same with Stanley. So there is some aspects of women actually playing guy roles that I think a lot of people don't. And I think, it was never even questioned beforehand until kind of where we become now. Guys playing girl roles, or girls playing guys, or these different aspects of it. And I'm really curious about that. Kind of, what is your opinion on that aspect of it? Because I noticed people were really surprised, because we've had Patty Wirtz, who played BJ on this show, and we've also had once again the actress that played Stanley, and people were surprised about that. So I'm curious about all that.
I mean, yeah, like you say, I think if you have any experience in the industry, like something like yourself, which is a much longer career than mine was, or someone like me who played one or two, a much shorter career as an actor, you sort of come to realize that something like my experience is quite commonplace. But I think that when it comes to characters that are very important to people, like Barney or his friends, or like DW, I think it matters more to people. People are very connected to the characters we played. DW is considered an icon in some sense, often a feminist role model, and I think that because DW was then voiced by male voice actors, there's a sort of betrayal that happens there to some people, which I think is totally understandable. I don't think DW being cast with male voice actors was something that was nefarious. I found out that women did or young girls did audition to play the part. And I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm just that's something that happened. And I think that as I say, or as I was saying, it's something that I think is worth at least talking about. Whether or not I'm able to arrive at some conclusion based on the podcast I'm doing, I'm not sure that I will. I'm not sure I'm the person to have that conversation, to come to that conclusion. But I just think it's important that if folks have an opinion and that they feel passionately about it, I'm not the type to shove that under the rug or just shrug that off. I'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think that's great. I think being able to give people an outlet and a platform to be able to have their opinions is really important.
Exactly.
And I think you find, and obviously I can say it on our show, Patty took that very serious. I mean, she really tried to get into the boy part of doing that. right? I
Mhm.
mean that
Yeah.
it's a really interesting aspect of that. And I know for us, and this surprises people.
Surprise
Um,
people. Yeah.
the character Barney, the body actor,
Mhm.
there was women that actually got hired in the early days, and there was one that actually did it on the road.
Right.
So I know the producers, and it's one of the things I am so proud of.
Mhm.
As we talk about diversity and gender and all of those issues,
Mhm.
Barney hired because it was the right person for the job.
Mhm.
There
Right.
wasn't quotas. There was none of that aspect. We were diverse because the best people were there, and I think that's what
Right.
you'll find in any show. It's unfortunate that we got away from it. There's no question it was needed in a lot of areas.
Mhm.
But I'm so proud of working on a show that was that way. That
Mhm.
was never even questioned. None of us ever said, "Why is the voice of BJ a girl? A female?"
Mhm.
Because Patty just embodied it. I mean, she just embodied that role,
Mhm.
and the actors that played the body costume of
Hang on. I gotta turn up my TV so we can all hear this. Oh, it's already turned up. Okay. Let me see here. Okay, let's continue on.
BJ, they really were, boys. So it really fit. It really fit. But it's a
Mhm.
really interesting thing, and I think it's so important to get all that out there because I think, I don't want to say conspiracy, but I think a lot of times people are immediately hear things like that and they want to just jump on it.
Mhm.
And I think it's great what you're doing to get that out there. Whether they're right or wrong, at least if you understand why they were hiring and what they were doing, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just cards on the table. Like I
Sure.
truthfully believe that they cast DW purely based on what they wanted at the time when they were starting out.
Sure.
That first person happened to be a talented actor named Michael Callows,
Mhm.
and I think that it wasn't something that they thought too deeply about because
Sure.
they probably weren't really thinking about, well, what will this decision look like in 25 years?
Oh,
Because I
Wow.
think it's pretty rare for shows to have runs like Barney or like Arthur.
Right.
Mhm.
So I feel like had they known that it was going to be this cultural touchstone, they probably
Like
would
Touchstone Pictures, for example. Continue on.
considered casting women in the role,
Sure.
just because of because of the conversation we're having now. I don't think that it was much more than that.
Sure.
And again, like it's important for me to mention, this is not like the focal point of my podcast. It's
Right.
really my it's a journey of self discovery, and it was about trying to find these other guys to learn from them, so that I could go on a journey and hopefully make that entertaining for people.
Okay.
So let's talk about that.
Sure.
Mhm.
How many have you found?
I found all of them.
You found all of
Okay.
them. So you've talked
Yeah.
to them all.
Yeah, including one bonus DW, which was really fun. While I was, when I started to release episodes, I got covered by a local paper here in the city of Toronto called the Toronto Star. And it just so happened that one of the guys who played DW reached out to me and said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe there's more of us out there." And he was not on any of my
Wow.
lists. I'd never heard his name before. And I looked into it, and it turns out, I'm not sure, but perhaps if you're familiar, but I'm sure some of your audience are. Arthur, in a one block episode, is broken up into two 10-minute chunks, and so I think this actor Ryan Aaronworth played DW for one 10-minute chunk.
Wow.
And he was this mysterious DW.
Wow.
So yeah, I've interviewed all the DWs I set out to interview, including this one bonus guy.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Wow.
It's fascinating because we went through that as well.
Right.
Actors that made one episode or this or for various reasons. That kind of stuff happens. And I'm fascinated also because being a podcaster, I don't think people understand how much research we do, how much we looking for people, how all of the things that the behind the scenes of a podcast probably is another. Well, I'm actually doing one called Life on the Purple Road, and we talk about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, which
Right.
I'm not planning to react to. That is a big no-no. Plus, I was a Patreon there. Continue on.
Because when I got into this, I had no idea um, how much it was going to take me to put this thing together. What has it been like, including the bonus one, to find all of these people and to find all this information out?
It's been a uniquely challenging experience for me because this isn't my full-time job,
Sure.
and so managing my schedule has been tough. But
Right.
actually doing the actual work is I'm very passionate about it. Even if I wasn't doing this particular podcast, I'm confident that I would be doing something in the space because I have been doing projects like this on the side of what I do as my day job for years and years, for as long as I can remember, really. So I find that stuff really fun, trying to find the people I'm looking for, booking those people. If I can't book them immediately, okay, what's a roundabout way I could try to find someone? For example, one of them I found it was a friend of a friend through Facebook that I didn't know was a common connection we had.
Okay.
So I asked that person to reach out to that person's sister to reach out to that person to text me the number.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Anything that I could do.
Of course I do.
Right? But I find that stuff really fun. So I think that the process of actually doing the work and especially this part, what we're doing right now, is my favorite part of the process. Of course, editing takes a long time. My editing takes I do everything myself, and the editing to make one episode takes me over 20 hours to make.
Right.
And so, of course, you hear a number like that. It's not the most thing in the world, but it's a lot when you're doing other stuff too, to pay your bills. So I'm tired, but I love it. Like I love what I'm doing. So yeah, of course it's challenging, but it's like you're saying, if you love what you do, it's great.
Right. Yeah, I do all the editing as well, so I know.
Yeah.
I know what's involved in that, but it's important, I think, because since you're doing the show, being the one doing the editing just makes a lot of sense, because it's your process.
Yeah, for me, I write my episodes in the edit, so I couldn't hand it off to someone because I'll do the interview, but then I don't know what story I'm going to tell until I get to the editing part of the process.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and then I will actually tell you what my answer to this question is too. But what is your favorite part of doing the podcast?
Oh, definitely the interviewing. I love conducting interviews. I find, like, over the years I found opportunities to just do this even not for projects of my own. For example, my aunt has a non-for-profit here in the city of Toronto called Case for Smiles, and she and her team sew pillowcases for kids in hospitals who have terminal illnesses. And she had asked me if I would do an interview with an early child life specialist whose job it is to be in the hospitals, taking care of the kids and sort of translating what's going on in their experiences from the doctors to the children. And it was fascinating for me. I loved doing the research, as you say, getting prepared to do the interview. But then just to be able to take that experience that I have and the passion I have for doing interviews and to do something good with it, and, to just hand it off to my aunt to be like, okay, here you go. Now you can use this as content to promote what you're doing. Was great. I thought of it as using my superpower for good. So it's definitely my favorite part is doing the interviews.
I love that because my favorite part is the interviews as well, but it's the things that I learned.
Right.
You ask questions and you don't know what answer you're going to get, and you learn things.
Sure.
And what I just learned is something I want to talk more about because it was my favorite part of all my years with Barney is the hospitals, the kids, the doctors. That experience was one I had no idea what I was walking into. I got asked to do one. I went in there and I walked out a different person. the way those people, from you name it, doctors, families, kids, changed my life is unbelievable. You go in going to do this interview, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden the experience. What was like doing that interview? What were the things that kind of surprised you? What did you learn out of that interview?
Well, I mean, everything that there is to know about that whole industry, right? I mean,
Sure.
I'm not a
Mhm.
medical professional. You know, I don't know anything about that industry really, other than you know, secondhand information from
Right.
friends or family who work in that industry. So getting to learn about a very specific part of that world was very interesting.
Mhm.
Um, you know, just hearing about how important something as small as, you know,
Mhm.
handing off a pillowcase with a child's favorite character on the
Mhm.
pillowcase to them while they're in a hospital, so that instead of, you know, going to bed on a blank pillowcase, they're going to bed on a Ninja Turtles pillowcase,
Right.
or
Yeah, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like in the review show, like for example, the out coming out of the show's tour thing. Joking. Continue on.
a Lakers pillowcase, or
Wow.
you know, Barney pillowcase.
Okay.
You know how important that is to the families, how special that is to the kids. It made me realize that you know, you never really realize, you know, you could go your whole life like doing these like small deeds or small gestures of kindness, but they can really go a long way.
Yep.
Yeah, and what I learned on top of that is that's exactly it. But I also learned how much they affected me.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
You get to do something like this,
Mhm.
probably thinking you're just helping them. What they gave to me, I didn't expect. Learning those things, learning how much it means, seeing how brave these kids are, seeing these doctors aren't just doing a job, right? This is so
Uh-huh.
much more than that, because they have to give so much more of themselves. It's pretty amazing experience.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So you're a 10-year-old, you go into doing Arthur, and you've never done voiceover before. What is that experience? Do you remember it? And do you remember that aspect of it?
Um, yeah, I mean, so when I started, um, a lot of the earliest episodes I was doing were already done. Normally, the way it works in animation is they record all the voices, at least in my experience. They
Uh-huh.
record all the voices ahead of time, and then they send off the voices to match to the animators, and the animators do all the actual drawing and the animating based on the performances from the voice actors.
Yep.
But in my case, a lot of the earlier episodes had already, that process had already been done. So I'd gone in and learned this thing called dubbing, which is what the actor will be in a booth. So I'm in a booth, I have a microphone in front of me, just like the one I have now. And in front of me, there's this giant like movie screen with the episode of Arthur playing. And based on this sort of time signature that you see on the screen, you sort of get a visual cue to start talking. And it's your job to deliver the lines and match the character whose voice you're doing's lips as they're moving.
Right.
So it was a lot of learning, trial by fire. So it was, I wouldn't call it challenging. It was lots of fun to learn a whole bunch of new techniques very early in the process, and over time it became, as I said earlier in this conversation, it was like doing anything else, like playing soccer after school. You know.
It's interesting. That's interesting, because sometimes you get nervous and stuff like that. Sometimes, we've had a lot of voice actors come on this show, and finding a rhythm and all of that. You seem like a pretty laid back person that was able to just go. Well, and it seems like that with your podcast as well, that you're able to just jump in, know what you need to do, and make the adjustments you need to do it. Am I kind of right?
I don't know. I really love it. I love doing it, and so it feels very natural to do it. I'm not a very laid back person at all.
It's interesting.
Yeah, what I find incredibly frustrating, and what I'll often be, complain about, not so much to people in my life anymore because it's just you can only complain so much. It's
Right.
a lot. But it's I think about how much work goes into everything surrounding what we're doing right now.
Right.
Even if you want to do, you think of a podcast or when people think of podcasts, they think of this, right? Two people talking. But as you said, it's so much work to find a person to do the booking. And that's just if you're releasing a podcast where it's, you just release the conversation. You take the audio from this Zoom, put it on a feed, and that's that. If you want to do anything else, it becomes this whole other can of worms, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think about, how wild it is that there's so much work around that around what I actually love, which is this, or if I was doing voice acting, it's the same thing. It's making sure my parents did all of it when I was a kid, but making sure it was okay for me to leave school, probably interacting with the school in some capacity, coming to pick me up, driving me to wherever the studio was, only for me to do the thing, which was again, it's all this work has gone in. Well, now I'm just here to do the thing I want to do, and I feel the same way with podcasting.
It's true, but it really, I think for me, the reward of it, for example, I heard about you, I did research on this, we found different ways to reach out to you, and then you end up having a fascinating conversation. And I think that's the part, even though there is all those other things, that I absolutely love about this, is that you end up finding these, you connect people and you find these very interesting conversations.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't love this piece of it, all the rest wouldn't be worth it, right?
Right. Right. Because obviously I know on both ends, right? I know with podcasting, but I also obviously know from Barney and Friends, what it was involved. For us, obviously, we were doing we were recording live, so our voiceover actors were having to follow us. So they're having to move to match my mouth movement, me making my mouth move where you're following animation. But the skills are in a lot of ways the same thing. So,
absolutely.
And I'm guessing you probably found voiceover actors are always thinking, they're always adjusting. I mean, there's such a talent to it, such a skill level to it. I've always been so impressed with it. I love having voiceover actors on here. Because you have to do all that. Now, were you basically doing your voice, or were you doing a character voice for Arthur?
I was pitching up my voice slightly, so my voice pretty much sounded like what you heard in the earliest episodes that I did as DW. And I think as it went on, I would pitch up just slightly more until, now I don't sound like that anymore at all, and couldn't even if I tried.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, so that part of that was your age.
Yeah, exactly.
Was that difficult? Having to keep the voice up there, but at the same time focus on all the things you're doing?
You mean like at school and stuff?
No. Okay. For me, when you're wearing a large costume like that, you are very aware of what you're doing, right? So even though I have to remember lines and I have to remember all those things, it very much is. But for a voice actor, you're having the script and follow this and direction and all those things, and you still got to remember to have your voice up a little bit.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. But again, it's all a fun. For me, I find it all a fun challenge. Can I? Because sometimes it's someone else feeding you the lines, but they're not acting. They're just saying the line that comes before that then DW responds to. Right. And so you're responding, full force as if you're in the moment. But you're not really getting a whole lot of stimulus in return to act across from. But I mean, as I feel like I keep saying, I'm sorry if it's not interesting, but truly, like, it just wasn't something I thought too much about. I was excited to interact and collaborate with the people who were directing me.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, no, that's what makes it interesting, right? Because everyone has an opinion, everyone has a story, and that's what makes it. Because some have these, oh, I had to do this and this and this and this and this, and others just went in and had fun and enjoyed it and just went with it. I think
Wow.
that's fascinating. What was it like all of a sudden now you're doing auditions for other shows and now you're doing other shows? And so I'm presuming those experiences were a little bit different. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I got the opportunity. I mean, so the only other show that I really played a fairly large part in was this short-lived show on Teletoon, which is a Canadian station. Um, and in that show, I was the main character's best friend. So I was in a lot of the episodes, and so it was
Wow.
really fun to just go in as often as I did, and I was a little bit more involved than I was when I was DW, because even though DW, of course, is this main character,
Right.
there are often episodes where DW just runs by and says something and then keeps going. Of course, there are episodes where DW's the focal point, the whole thing's about her.
Right.
But it's not every episode. Where in the Tofus, which was this other show, I found it felt more involved or something. So doing that was fun, just to do it again and to do the same process, but this time I'm not pitching my voice up anymore.
Right.
I'm just being
Okay.
myself or this other character. So whether it was that or I did dubbing for this French movie that they were dubbing, this musical, and I got to play a background voice in that. I got to appear on camera once in a yogurt commercial
Okay.
called Tubes, which is in the States it's Gogurt, so it's the
Okay.
same thing,
Yeah.
but in Canadian. So I got to appear on camera for that, which was really fun. But I think, other than that, that's kind of it. Like, that was really my whole career. So it was great to be able to do all the auditions and stuff. But I think over time I was just when I wasn't able to play the voice of DW anymore, it sort of it felt like a nice natural point in my life to sort of take a step back and resume normal life. I'm sure maybe you can relate to that piece of it. I'd be curious to know, but I don't want to take up. This is your time.
No, I appreciate it, but no, it's a conversation that I love having that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I was thinking about some of the kids, and I'll answer your part with me, but some of the kids had very different reactions. Some felt exactly like you, like when it was done, it was so much fun, and I loved it. But now it's time to do something else, and others were just destroyed,
Wow.
absolutely destroyed, because they'd done absolutely nothing wrong. They'd just grown up, nothing more than that.
Mhm.
But they loved it so much.
Mhm.
And obviously, I was on with Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez, so obviously both of them have had pretty good careers, so they were able to work that. But some of those other kids have not, and some of them are still out there acting, and they haven't found the success to that. So it's really interesting, the passion where you go with that.
Mhm.
With me, I've been doing it for 22 years. And I had done a lot of different aspects of it. So I did promotion for them. I toured all over the world for years, and then I did Barney and Friends for 12 years. Probably a little bit of both. There was after doing that for so long, the physicality was a lot. So my body was really happy that I was getting a break.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was probably time to try and do some new things. I went into photography, and I probably wouldn't have gone and found that love and passion I have for it if it wasn't for that. I went back to school. The Barney family is very close. I talk to them all the time. A lot of them are still here in Texas. Obviously with social media, we're able to keep in touch. So that's kind of probably the coolest thing is that I didn't have to give up my family, because they really became my family. I mean, I knew some of these people for 20-something years. And in fact, I just talked to a couple of them before this interview, because we're just friends. And that's probably one of the greatest things. Obviously, going to the hospitals with the kids, entertaining children, but you have a special bond with the people you work with, which leads me right into talking to these DW actors. What was it like when you all
Mhm.
started talking, hearing probably some similar experiences, but also some different experiences? What did you learn from all that?
That was a blast. I mean, every time I connected with one of those guys, it felt like this weird moment of I don't know how did we not know each other already? You know, we're
Wow.
here we are, these people who have had this experience where for a lot of us, our friends called us DW in real life. So
Right.
it's like this. It's a very much a big part of our identities. But we would never have actually met. We would have heard each other's voices because other than the first person who played DW, um, each person who got brought in to play the voice was as a voice match to match the person who played the voice prior. So each
Right.
one of us would have been very familiar with each other's voices at the time.
Okay.
It was the main takeaway I had is that all of us react to things differently, and that might sound like a simple, obvious thing, but I sort of went in thinking that a lot of us would have had my experience, which was yes, it was this really fun thing, but it also came with a lot of challenges.
Right.
But that really was not the case. Each person had a very unique experience. Some very relatable to me, and some that were totally foreign. For example, I think only two of them. No, only one of the. Let's think. Basically, not all of us went on to do acting or anything in show business. In fact, the second guy to play DW couldn't be further from show business. Um, but the guy who played DW after me, Robert Naylor, is a very successful actor.
Okay.
So I think what was my point? Oh yeah, my point was just that each of us reacted to playing DW in very different ways, and it was fun to learn about the nuances there. What did they like about playing DW that made them want to chase acting more? Versus what was the experience playing DW like that was so awful that it made them never want to step into a booth again.
Right. And well, yeah. What you kind of threw me off on that one, and I love that. What? What was it?
What was what?
That inspired someone that just it was so bad that I mean you don't have to give me exactly.
Oh sure. I mean I know for myself that a large reason, part of the challenges were just being a kid, just wanting to fit in, and really not fitting in. Through the chasing things that couldn't be more natural to me.
Yeah.
Which for being a voice actor at that age was such a large extension of that. I didn't think of it as I've said a few times, it really was just this after school activity and nothing more. But the attention I received, oh, you're playing the voice of a girl, and getting picked on for that was so foreign to me because I couldn't have in my mind I was doing something that felt so incredibly natural, and it felt so incredibly personal to be rejected for just being myself.
Right.
And I found that over time to be very difficult. And what I've learned doing my podcast is where I set out to with the mission of I want to learn from each of these guys who played DW with the goal of moving on from that experience to sort of grow up, graduate, and move on into my adult life a little bit more complete. And what I've learned is actually, no, this was this experience I had, but it doesn't define me. I shouldn't be pursuing. I shouldn't be trying to pursue achievements that are larger than having played DW because the value of an achievement isn't based solely on how many people know about it or recognize it to be special. It was more, the experience has taught me more about just coming to terms with this is not something that defines me, and that I did this and it was great, but I've got so much life to live. I shouldn't let it hold me back because it doesn't have to. And I'm sure maybe that's something you can relate to, because I can imagine that having played something as iconic as Barney could have maybe made you think, well, what am I going to do now that's going to top that? Because that would be, I imagine, a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things there. It, to that part, yes, absolutely. Yeah, when I was 23 years old when I started Barney. Um, so, all of a sudden, 2 years in, I'm at Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah.
I played Radio City Music Hall 3 times.
Wow.
I've been to Toronto and I performed sold out shows in the Sky Dome. There's not a lot of people that get those experiences. And there was an aspect of it where it was hard to, it does become hard to top that. You know, you, you're playing the most incredible places, you're having the most incredible experiences, and then you go to doing a TV show. And it was, to be honest with you, that was a little more normal life because I was able to go home, was able to see my family. We still did some amazing things, but when that ends, there is an aspect of that. And I'm really glad that photography I found that
Yep.
because it became a whole different experience.
Yep.
It was totally new, and it wasn't that. It didn't become, what can I top here? I kind of got pulled away from that. So that part was actually good because it is. It can definitely define you. I mean, obviously, all my friends, everyone knew me as Barney. So, yeah, there was an aspect of that, no question.
No question
The other
asked.
part that you mentioned that I'm really interested in because is did you and you kind of mentioned it, but did you get made fun of?
Yeah.
Being a guy because I heard so many times people would say, I hate you, Barney, they hated Barney, but I'm also an
Wow.
adult, so I know you don't personally hate me, right? And hate is obviously a very strong word.
Exactly. You have to do something about this whole crap, Sometimes I hate things, sometimes I don't, And yeah, I have to agree with that. Hate was a very strong word, I have to agree with carrying this one. It just made no sense to me, Continue on.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying because your child has been listening to the "I Love You" song 1,000 times, and you've had enough of that. I get it in the scheme of things. But when you're 10, 11, 12, and you're having people make fun of something that you love, that's got to be difficult.
Yeah. It's it's just I'm just laughing at because I'm sorry for laughing at when you said that. It's just so because you're right. Like it must have been so challenging to have adults come up to you and be just like, I hate you for what you do because of, and you're just having so much fun with it and it's your job. Because that's so ridiculous. I'm sorry I had to deal with that. What I'm so curious about is, did finding photography and was that a reaction that you felt you didn't want to do, you could like you weren't interested in doing anything in show business, so it had to be something that was away from that, and photography took you out of that world and into a new world. Would you go back, would you do anything later on in your life in some sort of performance art, whether that's acting as yourself or maybe taking on a similar role like Barney?
Yeah.
Because those are the kinds of questions I would ask the other guys who played DW.
Right. The short of that is obviously now it's been years, my experience has changed. I found photography because I was doing video work afterwards because I wanted to do the other side of the camera. So that's where that came in.
Got it.
And then someone suggested, hey, you could be better at this if you took a photography class. And I was fortunate to have the greatest teacher in the world who just opened my world. And all of a sudden, and this, when you're doing something like Barney or you're doing DW, there's directors, there's a lot of people involved. And photography, there was no one involved. I could go take a picture of whatever I wanted, whatever I saw, whether it was great or not. And so I needed and enjoyed that very much. 3 years ago, I had the chance to play Barney again for an event. It
Wow.
was one of the greatest experiences of my life because I hadn't done it in almost 10 years. And
Since 2019, as I'm taping this episode of LJ Reacts, continue on.
not that I had never lost a passion for it, but being able to be part of that again was pretty special. So I don't know. Could be something I'd want to jump out again. For me, I found this outlet of podcasting, which I didn't realize I'd love it as much as I have. What has your experience been with podcasting?
I mean, I found out that I loved doing some version of podcasting, in 2011,
Wow.
doing student radio in in school, and I did my first podcast that was just my own show in 2016, and I did that for about a year, and now I'm doing this. I've always been really interested in the medium, with doing interviews, finding people to interview. Um, and like as you say, it was something that I always knew I liked. I mean, even in my first year of university, I just took an opportunity to go and interview a band that someone through school. I don't even remember how it happened.
Yeah.
And it took me so long to connect the dots and realize, whoa, this is something I'm passionate about. And hey, maybe you should be putting more effort into this because this is something you enjoy. Because I think no one tells you that what you're passionate about. It's something you have to discover for yourself. At
Yes.
least that's what I think. So I've always I can't remember. It's been so long I can't even remember a time before I was just completely obsessed with doing podcasts.
Well, I think you're right. No one can tell you that. I've tried almost every aspect of the creative world you can imagine. From trying to sing, I'm horrible at it, but I tried. I played the piano, I'm okay at it, and I can go on and on and on. And I think that's where podcasting. But what I realized, it filled a lot of the things that my creative soul needed, that I got from Barney, in a different way. Right? I'm getting the opportunity to tell other people's stories, and I love that. I love hearing your story. As a lot of what I got from the kids and all those people in the Barney years, hearing your story does that for me, right? It's really interesting to me. I've learned a lot from talking with you. We're just spitballing here, so I've really got to think, like I did in my Barney days. I really got to think about where this goes and what you say and where I go from there. So
Yeah.
for me, it's been so challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super interested in hearing more about your experience playing Barney, and I'm sure again, I don't want to take up the time that we have together right now to do that.
Sure.
But I just think that there are probably so many parallels in our experiences, even though mine was like my time as a voice actor was a quarter of the time that you spent of your life, devoted to doing this thing. As you say, there were these live components to it. Have you read Carol Spinney's book, My Life in Feathers? Or sorry, that's the subtitle. I forget the title. But have you read his book? His autobiography?
I haven't. Now, I had the opportunity to work with him.
Oh yeah,
and,
okay.
And I've talked about it on here before. It was one of the most incredible experiences, and probably a little bit of what inspired this, because I learned so. And I only was with him for a few hours. I met him a couple times, but hearing those different stories is amazing, and it's really interesting. And hearing your story is really interesting to me, because when you mention the name Arthur, almost everyone knows exactly what that is. I've got two teenagers here in this house, and they've talked about it. They grew up with it,
Right.
So it's really fascinating. And I didn't go into kids entertainment. Almost everyone I've interviewed on this show, it wasn't their initial goal to be into children's entertainment, but they probably found the most satisfaction from doing that, because of what the audience is and how you're affected. I have had, funny enough, a lot of people that have told me they hated me have now sent letters saying how much they love what Barney stood for. Like, I didn't get it when I was this age, or I didn't get it, but now I get it. Have you had some of that reaction when people find out that you were on that show, and what that show meant to you?
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Because I think at the time it seems like this crazy, weird thing. Just you're a guy playing the voice of this little girl on TV. But as I've gotten older, it's become this kind of this thing that people get really excited about in a different way, because now it's all of a sudden, oh, you were such a large part of my childhood. That's so special. versus when you're in it, I don't think you realize the value of it. So for me, I see it completely differently, looking back at the experience versus when I was in it. It was a lot more. There was a lot more feelings of anxiety and feeling overwhelmed with the world around me. But doing the actual thing was the most fun.
Right. Well, I totally understand that. That's part of the difference of being a 10-year-old. Obviously I was an adult. I was 30, 40, 20, 30, and 40 when I was doing that.
That's wild. But I imagine that it would have been really. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Carol Spinney outside of both of you outside of your costumes?
I did, and it was the most impressive, inspiring, because he had the same feelings I had. He understood
totally
how important what you were doing. I was going to say work, but it really isn't work. It really isn't. And his mind, amazing. No.
I was just going to say that there's just because how many people on this planet have had the experience of playing like these iconic characters that, in these big mascot costumes, but that kids adore to the level of Big Bird and Barney. I mean, you're probably among a very small subsect of people who have had that experience. I can imagine that if you were to get in touch with the person who plays Big Bird today, that would be a fascinating conversation.
And we just had him on a couple episodes ago.
There you go. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, we just had him on, and it was fascinating because he said kind of the same thing. I've never actually been interviewed by someone that had that experience.
Yeah, I did react to 35 last several episodes ago. Continue on.
Yeah.
His was different in the fact that Big Bird was established. Carol started Big Bird, and when I started with Barney, there was no TV show. I was actually doing birthday parties. It was a local show in the Texas area, the DFW area. So that's an interesting aspect because I was looking for a job, to be honest with you, and next thing I know, this thing is there's 25, 50,000 people showing up to see what you're performing, and all of a sudden you realize this is not a job. This is an experience. This is a responsibility. And Carol felt that way too. You were never sad. You were never tired. If you were depressed, no one was going to know it because they were coming for Barney, and Barney doesn't have those things. Barney's always happy and all of that.
Exactly.
Which obviously made you very happy. So if you were sad when you were getting ready to go to work, you weren't sad anymore. Playing that character, which is very cool.
That's so interesting. That's super cool. Thank you for sharing. That's really special.
Absolutely. Well, I've loved having you on today. You were fascinating, and I love hearing what you've done with this podcast. I think it's so interesting. Not only the experiences with the other actors, but the issue that we started off this interview about different genders and all of that playing that. I think you've opened something out and given people a forum.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Carrie. I was really excited when you guys had reached out to me, and it's so surreal because I grew up absolutely loving your show. So this is it's really special for me to be able to talk to you about what I'm doing today, and just it means so much that you found what I'm doing interesting. And but I really appreciate you taking the time with me today, and that you're interested in what I'm up to. It's really special for me, so I can't thank you enough.
Well, my pleasure, and understand it means a lot here at this household. Both the kids were talking about Arthur the other day. And that was very cool. Please keep up the work with the podcast. I think you've got something that can go and people really enjoy.
Well, thanks. I mean, I'm wrapping up what I'm thinking of as season 1 now.
Sure.
And so I think it'll be I've earned myself a bit of a break. But we'll see what happens next. I'm really excited about the conversations I'm having now, and about the ideas that are being floated out there. So we'll see. But again, it's super cool and means the world that someone like you finds me what I'm doing so interesting.
Well, I do, and whatever you do next, you'll have to come back on again, and we'll talk about that.
Great. Well, wow. I'm really looking forward to having to being able to talk to you on a regular basis, because I cannot wait to tell my mom that I had the chance to talk to Barney. That's just crazy.
Wow.
She did not hate you.
Well, I'm good. Tell your mom thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Jason.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching Purple Roads. Remember to keep your eyes, ears, and your heart open, and you'll find your Purple Road. We'll see you next week.
So that was Purple Roads Podcast, episode number 81. What do I think about this episode? I think it was amazing. I will save Finding DW on LJPCBM some other time, but that's just me, of course. Anyways, guys, that was LJPCBM episode number 848. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be LJPCBM episode number 849, Purple Roads Podcast episode number 82, and it's going to be an interview of let's see what happens next. Till next time, so Joseph, bye, peace out, baby. We get more LJPCBM, guys, be soon. Till then, just out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. I ask, why me? Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.